Hello everyone, thank you for joining me to hear this session on conscious communication, speaking from the heart. I'd like to just start by introducing myself. I have been focusing on this work of teaching peace for the past 8 years, and it's become more sharply focused more recently in the last 2 years when I've dug a little deeper into a practice called nonviolent communication that was developed by a man called Marshall Rosenberg. He instigated this process and championed it all over the world. And it's really what the process is it's a concrete way to practice compassion, of giving tools to humanity of how to connect with each other on a far deeper level than we do through the cultural conditioning that we get in modern life. So when I'm saying connecting on a far deeper level, this means actually really honoring ourselves and honoring other people in the way we communicate. It also connects with an Indian spiritual practice of ahimsa, which is do no harm. Nonviolent communication really focuses deeply on a person being able to express themselves and interact with others in a way that's free of judgment, guilt, shame, blame, threats, and coercion. And this beautiful way of communicating also enables a self-communication that allows us to really dig deep to where we are in our bodies, in our feelings, in our hearts, and in getting our needs met. Just like you to take a moment now to center yourself. And the NVC consciousness is really about connecting in and being present with where you are in this moment. So I'd like you just to take a moment and just check in with how you're feeling. If you're feeling a little bit anxious or a little bit unsettled, or if you're feeling very calm and connected, just acknowledge whatever is. And I'd like you to consider, with just the little knowledge that you have, about what would you like to really learn about communicating with yourself and others. We'll be running this process in 2 sessions. The first one will be a foundation week where we really get to know what our personal triggers are and what causes us to communicate in ways that are not life-serving. And we'll take some time to really unfold how the process works by looking at some of the concrete parts of the communication. And the second week, we will apply the things that we've come to understand into the school setting. In our daily lives, the race that we undertake every day to fulfill obligations, to work, to relate, to live, create a pressure upon us that often means that we don't take the time to really be conscious of how we're communicating. So we're going to look at cultivating presence. It's about how we can actually bring ourselves out of our minds and out of the thoughts of the future or the worries of the past and into the present moment of slowing down and anchoring ourselves in body awareness. So the best way for us to do this is to start to breathe into the heart. I'd like you to take a comfortable position, and if you're willing to close your eyes for a moment or just rest your gaze softly. Just turning off for a moment the pressures and the presence of things around you and turning inside to your inner feelings and your inner world. And I want you to take very gentle breath while breathing the energy into your heart space. And as you exhale, allow your heart space to relax and unfold. Continuing to breathe in and out gently with full awareness for this precious, precious moment we have. When you're ready, you may gently open your eyes and just sit and notice this present moment. I'd like to consider what you could connect or what you could hook into the feeling of being present. Would there be an audio or like a voice that says be present or here and now or connect or I am here? Or could it be a visual of maybe a Buddha sitting peacefully or a rainbow or a heart? Just connecting with what it would be that you would hold dear to connect you to this moment. And I'd like to offer you the gift, the invitation of what this work is. It's really to develop a concrete way to practice compassion and connection. It's about coming to relationships from a higher purpose of love and connectedness. It's that we value everyone's needs equally, including our own. Now, this means that in our interactions on a daily basis, we look beyond the strategies people are using and understand that everything is driven by needs, universal needs we have that we would like to have fulfilled. And when we can acknowledge that, we can see the utmost importance of everybody's needs being valued and everybody's needs being considered in any course of action. Because we are all equal. We are all experiencing the same things, just in different ways. And alongside that part of embracing needs, I'd really like to look at how we can acknowledge feelings on a really deep level. These feelings that we have that arise in our body are the signposts. It's a signpost to what we're needing, to when our needs are met and to when our needs are unmet. And we want to change our consciousness about behavior. We want to begin to see that every single action is the most beautiful possible thing we can do to meet our needs. And sometimes those actions may appear underdeveloped or unthought out or unsupported, but they really are the best possible thing we have available to us to connect with our deeper needs. So, when a child is hitting another child, their feelings of pure frustration, and their needs may be for many things. Their need may be for regulation, their need may be for connection, their need may be to be seen, to be heard, for attention. So when we look deeper, we understand we don't need to judge the behaviors. We need to go deeper and connect with the needs. I'd also like us to move away from right-wrong thinking, of things being appropriate or inappropriate, because the moment we judge things, then we create a distance between ourselves and the other person. And this distance sees us draw on coercive measures in our relationships and in our language that it may stem from judgment and anger and frustration. And finally, we meet needs through independent relationships. We are here to support and love each other and to love ourselves so deeply. And this is a way we can do this in a very concrete way with this amazing consciousness that connects it to a higher purpose. So I'd like to consider this image of building the fire. In any relationships we have, if we try to put a lot of pressure, like a fire by putting on a lot of wood, or we offer a lot of wind, like a lot of verbal advice or direction or judgment, then the fire is not going to be kindled in a gentle way and most likely will extinguish. But we want to consider the relationships that we hold with people around us like beautiful fires that we're nurturing, small piece by small piece of interaction and connection and acknowledgement. And as those pieces build upon each other, then we get the results of a glowing, contented relationship. But without that gentleness, then we can be forcing to create change and to move people to be things that are different from what they are in that moment. So let's be gentle. Let's build the fire slowly. Let's connect with every piece of wood and really, really nurture that flame. So, in summary, the formula for the nonviolent communication is that firstly, we observe concrete actions that affect our well-being. So everything that people do, we can observe them in a completely non-judgmental way. We can then see how we feel in relation to what we observe. So we can connect down to, how does that make me feel? What feelings arise? And then we can go deeper to see what were the needs and values and desires that created our feelings. And finally, the concrete actions we request in order to enrich our lives. So I'll give you an example to help you understand maybe a little bit deeper this concept. So I'll give the example of my children jumping on the couch. And they're vigorously jumping everywhere and knocking all the cushions to the floor. So what I observe is I can see the jumping on the couch. And I can connect with my feelings. I feel frustrated and unsettled. And then coming to the needs and values. I have a need for order in the house and respect for the things that we own. And then I'd like to offer a request so that the children can then connect with me and find a way to maybe meet my needs for respect and order. So I might ask, would you be willing to go down to the trampoline and jump there? And as you might have heard, it's a very assertive language in that we don't criticize another, and nothing in the language implies the other person is wrong, inappropriate, selfish, or insensitive. We're merely just expressing our deeper needs and values and feelings in a non-judgmental way. So when we're expressing ourselves in this way, there's a couple of ways that we can offer that expression. The first one is through self-empathy. So that's using the model to connect to self. So I could do that by saying, I observed that I was in the kitchen at dinner time and I slammed the fridge door shut. My feelings might be of some kind of unease or upset or feeling disappointed. And then I might connect a little bit deeper and think, wow, what's the need there? And the need is actually to have more support or connection or cooperation when it comes to meal times when the people around me. So I could make a request of myself. Maybe I could ask, wow, would you like to take a break and just take a moment to think this through a little more? Or, wow, maybe you could ask for some of the needs to be filled. And that internal dialogue that we're going to develop can carry you through so many situations where in the past you would have looked to externally demand or shame or blame or threaten someone else to fill your needs. Then moving up the branches of the tree, we can see empathy. That's when we dissolve ourselves to be present with another person's feelings and needs. And self-expression is how we talk about acknowledging another person and their feelings and needs and how we can request of them. The thing about this tree is that as we understand with trees, the roots will dig deep down and the branches will stretch out so wide and they will balance each other out. So we'll be looking at how we can form really strong roots that draw nutrients from our inner being, from the earth, and how we can have the values there that support the upper parts of the tree. I'd now like to take a moment to talk about power. In a relationship with children, adults naturally hold a greater access to power. And this could be external resources, such as food, information, transport, money, and internal resources like the tools of potentially speaking in ways that could coerce children, or the self-regulation that adults need that children may not have developed yet. So I want to hold with great tenderness this idea that we naturally hold more power than children as adults, and how we can be conscious of that in our interactions with them. There's two models that we can look at here, and one of them is power over, which is a traditional culturally created model, and the other one is power with, which refers more to the NVC conscious communication model. Power over relies on domination, power with partnership. Power over is authoritarian, where what the adult says goes. And power with is a concept that power is equally held. We will always provide strong guidance, drawing on the values that we have. We will not use it in a way that is overpowering to children. The power over long-term goal is socialization. We feel a pressure to demand children behave in certain ways so that they can fit within a social structure. But with the power with, the long-term goal is compassion. Compassion for where you are in the moment, compassion for self, compassion from others. And from there, the social connection blossoms so beautifully. The short-term goal with power over is compliance. That what an adult says should be done is done in a timely fashion. The power with the short-term goal is authenticity, because we're really looking deeper. We're really looking to express our feelings and needs, but then we're actually looking to see whether this can align with the child's feelings and needs, that we can support each other. The power over love is conditional. There's often a withdrawal of love and attention and affection when a child doesn't respond in ways that we may have deemed appropriate or inappropriate in the past. But with a power with relationship, the love is unconditional. We love regardless of any behavior that we see. And the questions are, what do I want my child to do differently for power over? Which means we're really only looking at that outward behavior. With power with, what do I want their reason to be for doing it? Where is their motivation? What is it that's driving them to meet our needs? that full authenticity that comes from knowing that you're behaving in a way that's so supportive for your well-being and the people around you. So there's lots of ways that we can set up domination. Through our language of blaming, shaming, threatening, coercing, forcing, or guilt. Through our feeling that as an adult, we're in a privileged position and we know better. Through controlling and enforcing. From diminishing the responsibility that a child might have in the situation to enforcing what we think is the best way to go forward. Implementing unrelated punishment. So any form of punishment is a form of domination. Using bribes to see behaviour that we're looking for. Putting children in timeout where they're isolated and in a traditional, in a cultural sense, we think that giving a timeout will mean that the child will sit and think about what they've done wrong, but actually they sit there and think about how hurt they feel and disconnected they feel. Consequences that we set up these ways of experiencing the world, that if you do this, this will happen to you. And we're already giving a message that we don't think you're capable of meeting our expectations. And that the fact that we even have expectations in the first place is really part of the problem. In action, when things don't go well for kids and we sit back and say, we told you so, this is the consequence of what you've done. And all the child sees is that mum or dad or my teacher could have helped and decided not to. And finally, praise. Praise is just as damaging as punishment, as it's manipulating the child or trying to use a way of changing behaviour through offering a reward. And that external motivation in the long term can really affect a child as they constantly look outwards for approval when they could really look inwards at their own sense of self and well-being and self-love. I'd like you to take a moment to think now if you're holding power in partnership with the children around you. And why this is all so important and so relevant is that we actually create a child's inner voice. The child's experience as they grow is to model the behaviours they witness around them and to learn self-regulation from the way the adults around them regulate self. And I really love this quote. I think it really offers a depth of understanding in this process. And it says, finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You're also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, an unlearning, an excavation, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. And a really important part of this process is to reflect deeply on those messages that were given to us as children. The ones around our sense of self, our feelings, our responsibilities, and our needs. For me, growing up, there was a lot of pressure to perform in certain ways that gave me a message that maybe I wasn't quite good enough unless I was doing certain things that my parents would like to see of me. And my feelings weren't valued. I was often told to be quiet, to not be upset, to not accept those parts of myself. And I felt a responsibility to respond in certain ways that weren't really life-serving to the people around us, to be a good girl, to do the right thing. And then some of my core needs were pure acceptance and connection weren't really being met because I wasn't able to connect in deeply with myself. So I'd like to just take a moment to think of some of those things that may have impacted on you and the way you now perceive yourself and your inner voice. And so when we understand that, and we understand those messages that we have been given from our families, in the absence of reflection, history often repeats itself. Research has clearly demonstrated that our children's attachment to us will be influenced by what happened to us when we were young if we do not come to process and understand those experiences. By Dan Siegel. So when we have unresolved emotions within us, we have a pattern of needing to control the outside to make the inside feel better. And this turns into triggers. And they're those moments where we have a physiological response to the way the children are acting around us, and we begin to get heart rate goes up. We feel feelings of frustration and dis-ease and anxiety and worry, or even anger. And what we need to become aware of is that whatever is happening around us is triggering us to remember something about ourselves. So I'll give you an example. When Fox, my eldest son, gets really, really angry, I become completely overwhelmed and very stressed. And I try to corral him into a room and shut the door and tell him he needs to calm down. We need to be safe, and that we need to just stop the anger. And this would make him feel more angry and more upset, and he would spiral out of control quicker and more easily. And if I look at it from the trigger response, I discovered that the belief that I have around expressing anger is that it's dangerous and it's not appropriate. I was told as a child if I expressed anger to be quiet and go to my room. So that situation that happened in childhood meant that I had an unmet need. My unmet need was a lack of acknowledgement. I was not acknowledged with my feelings. And I felt that I was told that feeling that was unsafe. So I didn't ever feel a sense of safety, and the need I had for safety to be felt whilst expressing my anger. And some of the other ones could stem from when children don't, you feel that children aren't respectful to you. You have a need for respect, and that may be because in your past, with your childhood, you weren't deeply respected. You were ordered around and told what to do and expected to do it, or else. So you actually have a deep need for respect that's not being met. And maybe you feel really frustrated or really stressed and worried and out of control when you hear a person or people fighting or conflict with your children or amongst children. And that could really connect into a need for peace. Maybe you grew up in a house where there was a lot of fighting. So it's really about thinking, whenever you get a sensation of being triggered about something, about a behavior, we need to take the time to see how you really feel about that. And what connection it had to your needs around that situation not being met in your childhood. And the beliefs that you carry that may not be serving you very well anymore around that. Let's take a moment now to consider what triggers you most in your relationships with your children and how we can unpack that. So we're looking at the tree of compassion. The root system is such a critical part of anchoring the tree and delivering nutrients to the upper parts of the tree. And the question I want to ground the root system is in, that we carry with us, is what can I do in this moment to improve the relationship with this child? What connection can I have? That's where I'd like the roots to be in our interactions with children. But to really define that, I'd like to consider the mission statement that we have, or our values, or our vision. But how do you want to connect to human beings in a wider way? So when we have our roots deeply embedded in a value, then we can continue to refer to that value in our relationships. For some ideas, maybe I really want to enhance the child's feeling of personal power. I'm committed to making the lives of children more wonderful. Everything the child does is the most beautiful thing they could be doing. I check in with myself before I check in with the child. What I say to the child becomes their inner voice. I value choice. I want everyone to feel heard and their voice is valued. I want everyone's needs to feel valued. And deep in my value system, I really feel that I want everyone to feel heard and their voice is valued. And I want everyone's needs to feel valued, including my own. So I'd like to work deeply on what are the values that the school holds, because these are things that will anchor us in our interactions and in our thoughts about what kind of process we can develop. So if the roots are the values and they are the deeper needs, then we can look now at the juxtaposition between that and the short-term demands that feel so pressing. So when we are, for example, in the morning trying to rush out of the house, and we have these short-term demands on us of timeliness and needs to be competent and have flow in getting ready and cooperation. If we just merely focus on trying to get out the door to meet a need of being timely, then we might miss the short-term demands and connection that's really the opportunity in those interactions. So instead of demanding and threatening to get ready and to hurry up, we can really sink down into what are my needs and feelings in this situation. And often it will be that if I have a need for a deeper value of connection, I can sit with my child and connect whilst we're getting ready to go out of the door. And I can be lighter and more funny and more helpful when it comes to getting everything done, instead of putting myself in opposition. So the values are what we can draw on to create the relationships in the upper part of the branches. So part of this process then is really being able to sink into those roots. But there are some things that prevent us from doing that, which is the external pressures, or the self-judgments, or the shoulds. So what I want us to sink into is when we're feeling that unease and that need to shape and mold things and make that fire go quickly, how we can connect with our body sensations, how we can feel what's happening in our body in that moment, and how we can think of what are we feeling in that moment and what are our real deep needs and values in that moment beyond what we're trying to get done. So tuning with self is really the best possible way to attune with others, because it brings us back to the present moment, creates self-understanding. It's really that vital pause, or that cool down moment before we take action. And it really gives us the space to ensure that we're making choice in line with our values. We begin to build a trusting relationship with ourselves instead of pushing ourselves through life, trying to meet all the expectations that are around us. We can really sit with what our core needs and desires are. And then a beautiful byproduct of the gift of self-empathy is we can model that for our children. We can show them that when we connect deeply with who we are, we give them permission to connect with who they are. And really, it's the most beautiful gift you can give anyone to lead an authentic life. So when you're feeling stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, please connect to your body, to your feelings, and to your needs. Become aware of yourself in that space. So let's just take a moment to see the things that inhibit our ability to connect. And a lot of this comes from the language of judgment. What we're aiming for is this feeling of this beautiful field where out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. And I'll meet you there. When we dissolve the separation that we have between each other and relinquish those judgments, then we're free to be in a space of connectedness with each other. And culturally, if we think about how and socially how we talk in our head or to other people about things that are really bothering us. And we described the person, how the person is acting in that situation with so much anger or judgment that or just displeasure. So we can say things like, "Oh, I can't believe she's so cranky," or "I can't believe she didn't get this done," or "He's such an annoyance," or "They're so hard to handle," or "It's just too much," or "The emotion is too big," or "It's not enough," or all these ways of distancing ourselves from what just is. And Marshall used a beautiful example of a giraffe and a jackal to describe this difference in language. So the compassionate language is represented by the giraffe, who's the land mammal with the biggest heart. And the language of judgment is represented by the jackal. The jackal uses four tools, the four tools of 4Ds of disconnection. And they are diagnosis, judgment, analysis, criticism, comparison, the denial of responsibility, demanding, and deserve-orientated language. So the first one is moralistic judgments of who is what, the John Wayne school of relating, where we see, wow, that's the good guy, we'll buy them a drink, and that's the bad guy, and we'll shoot them. We create this dichotomy in our lives about what's good and what's bad, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. But if we're raised speaking a language of compassion, we can learn to articulate our needs and values directly rather than morally judging others. We can embrace our values and own them. There's an example of a woman who was at a dinner party, and a man that she hadn't met before was there, and he was speaking in a way that described women and other races of people to be less equal than himself. And this woman was infuriated. She was so angry. But instead of judging this person for his beliefs, she took the time to express how what he was saying did not fit with her deep values that she held about respect for all, about connection, about understanding of others. And through that way of expressing herself, she was able to really connect with what her values were. And it was a beautiful gift. take a moment, if you may, if you'd like to think about what moralistic judgments you hold and what values underlie them in the classroom and at home. You know, they could be judgments around what the expectations are of certain behaviours, or they could be judgments around what what is the right way or the wrong way to do something. Comparison. It's another jackal tool. The moment we can compare two things, we distance ourselves. And it happens a lot in sibling relationships where we can see what one person is doing, and we can see that as being more beautiful than what the other person is doing. And it creates a distance. Another one of the tools is denial of responsibility. We are dangerous when we are not conscious of our responsibility of how we behave, think, and feel. And have to is such a common expression in our lives, especially when we're trying to communicate things to our kids. You have to brush your teeth. You have to do this. You have to do this. This is required of you now. You have to eat your greens. You have to do all these things. But when we're speaking like that, we're actually not really owning what we're desiring. We're attributing it to vague factors outside of ourselves. It could be group pressure, institutional policies, regulations, gender, social or age roles, or it can be ideas of things that may be for our best well-being in terms of cleaning our teeth or eating our greens. But when we phrase it in a vague, you have to do that, then we're disconnecting from our responsibility of where our values lie in connection to that thing. So I'd like you to think about all the have-tos that you have in your life and for your children's lives. How many things do you have to do? And know that you can actually choose language that acknowledges choice, so it implies a lack of choice. So instead of saying, I have to cook dinner, you could say, I choose to do this because I love to nourish my family. Or I choose to do this because it's important to me that everyone eats well. And then if you're wanting to request something of someone else, you can say, I'm asking you to do this because I value, or because I need that. So, I'm asking you to brush your teeth because I value the hygiene of your mouth, or that your whole body is cared for deeply, and part of that is caring for your mouth and the teeth in your mouth. And I really value that cleanliness that comes from cleaning your teeth. And there's a different energy that comes from that, a different way that a child can connect than being told they have to do something with no choice. The language of demands, like a strong gale force wind that blows through when we walk around demanding that people meet our needs in unconscious ways. And what we're saying is, if you can't meet my expectation, then we'll move into the language of deserving. And that's saying, if you can't meet my expectation, then you deserve this to happen to you. So if you weren't able to comply with something I requested of you, then I'm saying that this is, the consequence of that is your fault. Or that it can be phrased another way, I told you so. I told you not to do that. Now you've done it. I told you so. I told you this would happen. It's actually saying that, and giving a message that the child deserves to be in discomfort for exploring how they're meeting their needs in different ways. The accumulation of shame comes from those feelings of a person being wrong, that their actions are actually deeply implicated with who they are as a person. And in time, this blocks the ability to trust in yourself and to know yourself and to feel self and to love self. And people become driven to do things out of fear, guilt, and shame, and feeling not good enough, because they've been told for so long that their behaviours aren't appropriate, that that what they're doing is not okay, and that they're wrong. And that feeling of shame accumulates into this feeling of not being good enough. And I, hazard to, I guess, say that 90% of us have that feeling embedded in us from our childhood. So where does this show up in your life? Where do you feel these feelings of inadequacy? What's your inner voice when you make a mistake? So the antidote is life-serving language, reframe with values. How could you reframe one of your 4 Ds of diagnosis, denial of responsibility, demand, or deserve language, drawing upon your values? I'm just going to leave you with those thoughts for a moment, and we'll continue in the next video.